Welcome to Coffee with Kelly. This is the Crisis Go podcast, and I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go. I'm here with my colleague, fellow co-host, and school safety analyst for Crisis Go, Kelly Moore. As a retired commander from the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department, Kelly has over 30 years of experience helping school districts improve safety through defining safety plans and encouraging everyone to have a part in their school safety ecosystem. In this episode, we explore the importance of building a strong safety culture within your school district. From understanding shared responsibilities to developing policies and procedures, training, and commitment from management, we delve into the key elements that make up a successful safety culture. We'll discuss how to create a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment for all by aligning beliefs, values, and behaviors towards a common goal of safety. Now join us for insights and practical tips on establishing a strong safety culture in your district. Good morning. Kelly, how are you?
I'm well. It's been a good week for us.
Yeah. Tell me about your week. Anything exciting happen?
Just working through the blogs and getting everything ready for the next episodes and editions of the blogs and the podcasts. So a lot of things are happening.
It's hard work.
It is.
So today we're talking about building a safety culture.
Yep.
So how does a safety culture differ from just having policies and procedures? Because we've talked about policies and procedures before.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're talking about a safety culture. So what is the difference?
So let's recap that a little bit, right? We have the three pillars. We have systems, policies, and people. Policies drive your whole safety program, right? And we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast.
Yep.
And they set expectations. They set procedures and who's supposed to do what roles and expectations. And you can also, by other policies, make your safety policies enforceable, holding people accountable to that, right? And your systems are those things and processes that bring everything together. So oftentimes we think of the systems like access control systems, video surveillance systems, communication systems, platforms, those things, right? And then we talk about the people and we talk about the importance of those people and how if we don't train those people properly to monitor and use those systems and follow those policies, then pieces of our whole safety program start to fail. And even if they don't fail immediately, they'll likely fail when you need them most because your people are the ones responsible for making sure everything works correctly, right? When we start talking about safety culture, we're talking about a shared systems of beliefs, values, and behaviors. So we talked about how important the people are to the safety program, but now we're starting to talk about how do we get them there? How do we train them? How do we get them to start thinking about safety every minute of the day? And how do we get them to start infusing safety in everything that is they do? And how do we get them to start understanding that? And that's developing this culture of, shared beliefs and behaviors and values, right?
Yeah. So you're talking about basically your entire school to have the same beliefs, right? In what safety is, essentially.
Right.
Do you find that, obviously everyone has a different probably viewpoint on a lot of different things. People have different beliefs and values outside of the school. Do you find that you would run into similar struggles when trying to implement an overall belief or value in a school?
I mean, sure, people have different beliefs, right? And values and behaviors, right? As they relate to their outside life, as it relates to their political affiliation, as it relates to their family, right? And those are all different cultures, but you hope they're all shared in those groups, right? And so when we start talking about a safety culture, we can have different cultures that mix together, and we can share those beliefs for that purpose, right? And within our schools, we have a school culture, right? Now we just have to bring into that culture, we have to bring in the notion that safety should be part of that culture. And by explaining, training, and asking certain questions at certain points, how does this impact our safety, right? And how do we get them from thinking about safety only when there's a drill or only when something is happening? We need to get them to start thinking about the safety as a continual process and looking at everything they do is how does this impact our safety?
And it never ends, right?
Never ends. We talked about that a podcast or two ago.
So going through one of your blogs here that I have in front of me, you talk about creating safety policies and procedures. And there's actually a website that people can go to for just kind of a foundational understanding of where they should start.
Sure. There's many. Yeah. So REMS, the Readiness and Education and Emergency Management for Schools, right? And it's in the blog. So if you wanted to get the link for that, you can go visit that blog and we'd be happy that you did that. But it really does, it looks at school safety from a national level. And so you can, if you don't have policies, most people should. I think most states require that nowadays, is you have policies and what they are. But they have plans, they have a whole library of documents that you can use to model your policies and procedures and so forth. So really getting that in there and looking at what we need to do, what are the expectations, how do we get there, and how do we create this culture? It's not going to really address the safety culture, but what it is going to do is give you the foundation for the policies and procedures to start modeling expectations and roles and behaviors that your organization want to have their staff and students participate in, right? Last night I was watching the news, and I live in Virginia now. I used to live in California, but I live in Virginia now. So the most recent shooting in a school was at the beginning of January, where a 6-year-old brought a gun to school and shot a teacher. And Virginia prides themselves on being, pretty much in the forefront of school safety and so forth, because of course they've had several pretty high profile shootings at Virginia Tech and at the University of Virginia most recently. And so they pride themselves in being in the forefront. But the news last night was talking about all of the failures with this particular child on that particular day. And so I look at that, and there's two things that come to mind. First of all, they had zero safety culture because there were people who were identifying red flags to their staff and so forth, and they were being pretty much shoved to the wayside, right? And they weren't acting on them. But it also brought to mind my personal campaign that we should be moving philosophically from see something, say something, to see something, do something. And so there were 4 distinct inactions on that day. And, it all centered around this young child, 6 years old.
It's crazy.
Right? And the fact that people were hearing about this child having possession of a firearm, and they told somebody, and they said, hey, we think this kid has a gun. And the administration either didn't take the complete steps, so there maybe been 1 or 2 steps that they should have taken then, or they didn't do anything at all. And, and some of that was like, there was this idea that the child had a gun. There was this information. So one of the teachers or staff, and I don't know all of the information about this, told somebody and asked permission to search the kid's backpack. The staff member searches the kid's backpack and doesn't find the weapon. So they asked to search the kid's pockets. And they were denied that because he's 6 years old and he has little pockets. And I have to qualify all of this that I'm saying. It was a news report, and I don't know all of the information about everything that happened there, but this is just illustrating that there's no safety culture there, and there were red flags, and it was similar to that type of all four of the incidences were that kind of similar response to requests and information. And the final one was absolutely crazy from my perspective. And that was there was another child who reported seeing the weapon and being threatened to be shot if the reporting child reported what he had seen. And the administration says, don't worry about it. The day's almost over. Let's just ride it out.
No.
So that's obviously being reported from one side without the information from the other side, right? So,
I mean, if that was the case, that would be terrible.
Horrible.
Yep.
Right? And there has to be some sort of credibility to that because they're currently in the process of firing the superintendent. The assistant superintendent quit, and they're looking at the other staff members involved with those decisions not to act or not to act far enough, right? And so when we look at that scenario, we have to ask ourselves, what is the culture there? What is the safety culture there? And sure, we're being told if you see something, say something, but what should we really be doing? If we see something, we should be doing something.
Yeah.
Right? And I get it that the actual everyday culture of a school system is the principal is the final decision on everything. That should get thrown out of the window as soon as there's a safety issue involved. In fact, in incident command, ICS, you have your incident commander, and then you have below them, below the incident commander, you have an operations chief, a planning chief, a logistics chief, and a finance administrative chief. So those are the ones that get the functions done within an incident command. In between that structure of the incident command and the chief is a safety officer. The safety officer has the authority to stop any operation, regardless of how critical it is, if there is a safety issue involved. Until they mitigate that issue, there is no difference here. If you have a teacher who has information, do they need to sort of verify that information? Yes. But they should be able to do something. They should be able to call 911. They should be able to bring the child to a safer place, search them if necessary to prevent what occurred at the Virginia school. It just begs the question, what is their safety culture? And why can't they act on the information that they have without getting permission? Because it's a safety issue. And safety is what? The number one priority that we're being told, right? So we go back to a blog or two past where we're talking about the incongruity of what the administration, the school boards, the superintendents are telling us that school safety is our number one priority. And then you look at something like this and you go, yeah, it wasn't really, because you just wanted to kick the can down the street a little bit and hopefully survive the day because school was almost out. When in fact, if you're really thinking about the information that you've received already, if somebody was going to act out on their desires, the reason they brought the gun to school, so they're going to do something with that weapon, the closer you get to the end of the day, the more urgency that person feels. I got to do it because the end of the school is coming out, right?
Yeah, it's like, I got to do it because time's running out.
Time's running out, right? And so when you have that kind of urgency, that's not the time to say, let it just play out. We've got another hour or two, and then the day will be over, and then we'll be okay, right? You see that shooting was life-altering for many, many people, not just that child, not just that family of the child, not just that teacher, but we have people who have lost their careers, and just because they didn't understand what they needed to do.
I mean, the other thing that needs to be looked at in that situation is like the mental well-being of a 6-year-old that's bringing a weapon to school. It's not just, hey, let's get through the day. Like, that's not looking at, this is obviously an issue. I mean, is there any way that a school can help out with that, or is that strictly on the parents?
So the answer to that is yes, right? Ultimately, the parents are responsible for the behavior of their kids and so forth. The school has a responsibility to support that child. In this particular case, it was special circumstances here. This was a child who had identified issues. I don't remember exactly what they were, but there was a point where one of the parents was required to come to school with the child every day. And for some reason, this was a week that they decided to change that behavior. So I don't know whether it was a trial, the kid had been performing better or what, I don't know. So there are circumstances, but it does point out, right, that, and I've seen this many, many times, that concerning behavior is often disregarded because of a identified disability, right? So,
okay.
I always had some issues with them disregarding that for that reason, right? Because some of the identified disabilities, affect the ability to know the difference between right and wrong. The filters or the parameters of good behavior and bad behavior. They don't understand the consequences. There's lots of things. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider the identified disability as part of your consideration for what the next step is, but you shouldn't disregard it either. So consider it, right? I totally get it, but don't disregard it. Use it as a part of your evaluation, and don't just say, oh, he's got an IEP, nothing we can do about it. There is stuff you can do about it, and there's stuff you need to do about it. And some people would argue, I'm not an expert in this area, but some people would argue that many of the prior incidences, people had unidentified mental issues or emotional disabilities or cognitive disabilities, right?
So this sounds like you're leading into training and coaching.
Yeah. I mean, training is very obvious, right? If I have a policy that requires you to act a certain way, there are certain expectations. I need to train you on that policy. I need to tell you what your expectations are. I need to tell you how to meet those expectations. I need you to perform those expectations. So in law enforcement, when you go to the academy for 6 months, you have most states, it's between 4 and 6 months. And they train you to be law enforcement officer. They tell you what your expectations are, how to behave, how to respond to things, how to de-escalate, all of those things that we need to know. And then you're put into a field training program. And so the academy typically tells you how to be a law enforcement officer anywhere within that state, to get certified anywhere in that state, right?
Okay.
The field training program is one to reinforce what the academy taught you, but it's also to give you the expectations and the nuances of being a law enforcement officer for that agency and that jurisdiction. So you go through this field training program, and they have a list of tasks that you need to accomplish. You need to be trained on. I need to demonstrate what I'm training you on. You need to demonstrate that you can perform that satisfactorily. So we go into showing you, explaining the expectation. We show you how to do it. And then we ask you to demonstrate that before we can sign off that functionality, right? And so training a policy for safety, or any policy really, within an organization and education is no different. I have to read you up on the policy so that you understand what the expectations are. I have to show you what that is, and then you have to show me that you understand it, right? Before we can sign that off. So the training part is pretty straightforward, or it should be. Now, the coaching part is the real art of the training program, and the culture is, if you want to have a high-performing school in the realm of school safety, you need to keep people on the right track. And you need to coach them. So if you see a teacher walk by an open, secured, or an open door on the perimeter of the building that should be secured, and you say, hey, did you realize you just walked by an open door? And they say, oh, I didn't see it. Well, you should be looking.
Yeah, you didn't see it because you weren't looking for it.
Right? Or you saw it and you decided not to do something about it. Right? So the coaching part comes in and saying, hey, I need you to check those doors. Even when I'm not here, I need you to at least visually check to make sure that it's, I don't need you to go over and rattle the door. I mean, although that would be the next step, right?
Yep.
But I need you to make sure that that door is secure. That's part of the coaching, so that when they are walking by and you are not there to observe, you have some confidence or some higher level of confidence that they're going to look because you coach them through that, right? And so for me, the coaching is the most important part of the training. And we get that into that in the second blog of, infusing safety into everything that you do. Right now, the vast majority of our educators say, I have zero experience in safety. That's not my job. I don't know what to do. And, so we only think about it when it becomes an issue. And I have this saying that I coined. For them, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And it ceases being a problem when it ceases being a problem. So we have these two things that we have. Well, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Oh, it's a problem. Now we have to respond to it. Hopefully we'll do it correctly. But as soon as the day is over, we go back to the behaviors that we were exhibiting and practicing before the incident. And I've seen this numerous times in large scale incidents, floods, fires, and school incidences where, people don't think about it. And then all of a sudden it's happening and they're like, why didn't we do this? Why didn't you do? Well, we tried to, but you didn't care about it, right? But if we're thinking about the issue every day, why is that door open? We have a school football game this weekend. How does that impact our safety? What if we embark on a new curriculum? How does that impact our safety? A lot of times the answers are going to be, it doesn't. But unless you think about it, you're going to get into this mode. Well, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And if you do think about this every day and you see a large group of people, kids, gathering in an area that's not normal, you should be asking yourself, what's going on over there? How does that impact the safety of the school? And if you can't look at that and say, oh, they're over there doing this, I understand it's not a safety issue, you should go over and investigate. You should go over and say, hey, what's going on? Might be a fight, might be a bullying incident, might be completely innocent, something that you weren't aware of that was going to happen, but it's something outside of the norm and you investigated and figured it out. So we have to have those questions constantly going on in our daily operations. What's happening and how does it impact the safety of our school?
Have you ever had someone come back and say, oh, that just sounds paranoid? What would the response to that be?
So yes, people ask me. So I've also, as part of my job at the school district, I participated in virtually every threat assessment. And somebody asked me, how do you know this? And I said, well, I worked in law enforcement, right?
It helps.
It helps. But I had people who worked for me who did threat assessments. So I could often say, hey, we're having this event. Can you do a workup, a threat assessment? What are our risks and how do we mitigate those risks for this event, right? So they would conduct threat assessments. Oftentimes, because of the area that I lived in and worked in, we're close to Los Angeles, so we had celebrities, VIPs, world leaders come to our area quite often. So we had a pretty good working relationship with the Secret Service and other security agencies. So I have a fair amount of experience right there, right? I've been trained in it. But the reality is every day, every contact that a law enforcement officer makes, they're doing a quick threat assessment. Every call, they're doing a quick threat assessment. What do I see? And what does that mean to my safety? How is this person acting? I get called to a house. What am I hearing? What do the doors look like? What are the cars in the driveway? Do they belong here? Right? What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I feeling with my senses, right? And I'm taking that and interpreting that as, what does that mean to my safety? So when you talk about that and people's asking about, how do you do it, or why do you do it, or whatever, and then you explain that to them and they say, well, I don't want to live that way. Okay.
Because it sounds paranoid, right?
That's a shame that you have to live that way. And I said, well, yes and no, but I do it every day. And it's nothing to me. It doesn't cause any extra energy for me to do a threat assessment on where I'm at, what I'm doing. And most people hear this, and, I'm guilty of this behavior, is if I go into a restaurant, I go into a store, I know where the exits are. I keep a lookout for what's going on. If I go to a restaurant, my wife and my kids still to this day ask, where do you want to sit?
Because they know.
They
know you have a plan.
I have a plan, and I need to see who enters.
So you probably find a place where you can have your back to a wall and have like the most visibility to the entrance and maybe the exit or another door.
Right, but I have a visual so that I can see who comes in. I can see what's going on. My wife, sometimes she gets so upset with me, but I listen to conversations.
Yeah.
Right. And she goes, Kelly, stop doing that. And I go, okay, but I'm still listening. Right.
Yeah.
But, it's not to be nosy. It's all about what's that conversation going on in the booth next to me, and what is the safety implication to me and my family. It doesn't cost me anything, and it gives my family some peace of mind. Well, Dad's here. He's going to take care of it. And it gives me peace of mind that and it's hard to really document how this works, but there have been times that I have been convinced that I have stopped concerning behaviors because I made myself known to somebody. And I will say hi to everyone I pass on the street. And I'm not a particularly nice guy, but what I'm doing is I'm pointing to everybody and I'm saying, I see you. I know who you are. And so if something happens, they know I know. So this is one of those behaviors that I think if more people had it, we'd be a much safer society. We likely may be able to prevent things from happening, or at least being able to respond in a manner in which we give ourselves the best opportunity to survive something that does happen.
I try to do the same thing where I'll try to pick a spot in a restaurant where I can see everything. But the second that I even try to listen to some other person's conversation, I can't listen to the conversation that's happening at my table. So I just need to get better at it.
Yeah. I usually have to ask them, what were you saying? But I get it. My wife and kids are fanatics about Las Vegas. They love Las Vegas. And I'm not such a fan, except for Las Vegas is the best place to people watch.
I bet it is.
It is just all the crazies go to Las Vegas, right? And even if you're not crazy, when you get there, your crazy comes out.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's fascinating.
Kelly, what does your crazy look like?
You need a visual, and we can't do that on a podcast. It's crazy. It's just watching people, and it is a great training tool to go and start looking at people and watching their behaviors and learning what people are capable of doing in public. It's just, if you want a good theater for that, Las Vegas is it.
I've only been there once, and I want to say 12 or 13, so didn't really understand half of what was going on. So
Right. Yeah. There's just too many distractions, right?
yeah. So basically, we need to get to a point where those, visual assessments, whether it's out of school or in a school environment, become second nature. And it's not an instant, it's not going to happen overnight. It's just
Yep.
got to practice it, essentially.
Yeah. This is a process, right? Like every learning process, we're changing our behaviors, right? And we're looking at things. And, when you're learning a new sport or a new skill, like being an artist, right? All of those things, you have to start somewhere. And you're not going to be super successful at those new skills the first time you try it. And as you work through that, you start painting that picture or you start riding the unicycle, you're going to fall down a lot. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail a lot, but that's the time to fail and learn from those failures, right? And it's a process that is continual, never ending. And in fact, in law enforcement, we explain to you what we want our new recruits to learn after that 4-month training period. Every law enforcement officer has to continue with their training, especially on certain mandated skills that they call perishable. And those perishable skills are all of those skills that if you don't continually train on them, you lose them, right? And the safety concerns is that as well. So you have to continually train on those. You have to continually do that until it becomes, and we talked about this in the last one, you don't just train until you can get it right. You train until you can't get it wrong. And what that means is you have to continually train at those things and you become better at it. It becomes effortless. And sometimes you look at something and this is where your intuition is built. It's not really, I just have this sixth sense that this is going to happen. It's because you see something that is out of place and you just can't figure out what it is, but your previous skills training has told you something's not right here. And what do I need to do? Do I need to remove myself from this? Do I need to act upon that and confront that? What do I need to do? Right. And so, yeah, it's a continual process and we expect people to fail at the beginning and we expect people to continually improve. We don't expect people to be perfect and successful 100% of the time, but we do expect people to start that process and continually engage in that process until they give everybody in that school system the best opportunity to survive.
I kind of like the point that just hit on a little bit earlier about removing yourself from the situation. And when you see something, it's not always about, being a hero or whatever, right? That's like the next step. Like there's the step of recognizing that there's something wrong. And then the step after that is, okay, now what do I do? Am I responsible for like physically intervening or should I do something else? Should I walk away? Should I use my phone to contact someone in some way?
Right. Yeah. So those are all personal choices, right? And I will argue that the more you train and the more you gain the experience and skills, the easier those decisions will become. And you talked about seeing something and then making a decision as what to do. That's that reactionary gap, right? And that's that deliberation. What do I need to do? Do I need to attack the attacker or do I need to, make sure all of my kids are safe? I can't tell you what the correct answer is there, right? Correct response.
Right.
You will know. You can work through that, whatever those circumstances are. You can work through and you make the best decision for you. But here's one of the issues we have with the run, hide, fight process that a lot of people are familiar with is they say you have three choices of response. You can either run out of the area, you can hide, or you can fight, right? And those are really for the most part, your only choices, right? In an act of violence where somebody's actively trying to do harm to you is you can run away from it. What's the best response? Being somewhere where the violence is not, right? The second best response is making sure that they don't know where you're at, that hide. So that's that lockdown type protective action. And then if that gets breached or you're confronted is fighting your way through that so that they're the victim and you're not, right?
Yep.
But here's the problem in a school setting. Those are individual responses, not when you're in charge of students. You can't run if you're in charge of 30 kindergartners if they can't run with you.
Yeah, it'd be kind of hard to run with 30 kids.
Right?
Yep.
And you have to take them all. You're responsible for them all. So we have to talk about that. Now, what's your next best response, right? I don't know. But you have to think about, can you run? Yes, but only if you can take all of your kids with you, because you have that obligation to protect them because they can't protect themselves. So those are some of the considerations. But, you got into that profession and that's part of it now. So you need to work through that. And the more you do work through it, the easier those decisions will come and the quicker they will come to you and you will know what to do. That's building that safety culture. And let me just say this before I forget about it. That safety culture and all of those things extend to not only your school, but your community and those things that are connected directly touch the schools. But it also includes extracurricular activities when not everybody's at school, your sporting events, your drama productions, your field trips, your whatever that is considered a school activity. That school safety extends to that. And remember, we talked in one of the first or second blog is really when you talk about response to emergencies, there's not a lot of difference in the response to an emergency at a school versus someplace outside of that school. Your options are pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
So, recently we've had 3 mass shootings in California that were in areas outside of the schools. In fact, most mass shootings occur outside of the school. And I'll say this, we tend to classify school shootings as a different type of mass shooting than something that occurs in the workplace. But when you think about it, a school is the workplace for all of your teachers, all of your support staff, all of your contractors that come in, all of your itinerant staff, your substitutes. That's their workplace, right? So they're not separate.
Yeah, I struggle to see the difference. I mean, obviously there's a difference of, there's a different age group. You have your students who could be pretty young.
Right. So the difference is who you are protecting. Even in a college environment, the difference there, we treat those differently. And we shouldn't, and the only difference is the person or people you are protecting in one scenario are adults and the other ones are kids, right? And why we treat colleges and universities differently is because our population that we're trying to protect are legally adults, but they're not mature. They're still considered our children, right? From a father and a parent perspective. I'm sending my kids to college. How are your kids doing at college? The fact is they're adults, but we treat them as kids. I sent my daughter, who is a very intelligent, driven young woman. I sent her to college across the United States. We lived in California at the time, and she went to college in Boston.
Literally all the way across.
All the way across, right? Almost you can't get any further away from and still be in the United States continental, right?
Yeah.
That far.
Yep.
And she was 17 years old. She graduated young from high school and we sent her to college. So I know about these things and I explained to her, you're an adult, even though you're not technically an adult, you're an adult. So you need to act like that because if you get into trouble, I'm not down the street. It would take me a day or two to get to you.
Yeah.
So carry yourself and make those decisions as you would if you were an adult.
It's a busy area, very busy.
It is. But those are, it's workplace violence and we have to, consider all of those things, right?
Do you think that the teachers and professors and the staff at a college would have different procedures in a situation like that as opposed to like a elementary school, like in terms of like watching out for their students? Or since they're borderline adults, is there some level of like you need to build to like watch out for yourself?
Let's take this scenario. The answer is they're likely treated differently. Mm-hmm. But there's no set way, right? Because they're in this transitional period, from being an actual child, legally a child, to legally an adult. But on your 18th birthday, you don't all of a sudden, oh, I'm mature now and I can make all the right decisions. In fact, we know that college kids don't always make the right decisions.
Yeah.
And so there is some difference in the way kids are treated, that young adults are treated in a university setting, college setting, than there is in a high school, let's say. Interestingly enough, we do focus a lot of our energies on how we treat kids in the K-12 environment. We spend a lot of energy there. But most of the mandates about school safety are actually at the college level.
Interesting.
Right. So after Virginia Tech, there was the Clery Act, and we don't have time to go through all of what that means, but it basically means that you have to alert college kids if there's some sort of danger or something happening at the school. We don't have that same mandate at the K-12.
Right. Because probably elementary school, not every kid has a phone.
But what about notifying their...
Maybe they do. I don't know.
Well, a lot of them do, right?
Yeah.
So I was an anomaly at the time where I gave my kids cell phones right around the age of 9 or 10-ish. And that was back in the 99, 2000 timeframe. But I did that because there was a safety issue, because my kids traveled in sports and I wanted them to be able to get a hold of me anytime.
Makes sense.
Right. But nowadays it's a status thing. But you don't necessarily have to notify the kids. What about the parents who are acting on behalf of the kids? Why aren't we notifying them? Unanswered question. Parents want to know. If you don't believe me, pull up any school board meeting where there was a safety concern or a safety failure and the kid and the parents didn't know what was going on. See what they're doing at those school board meetings, what they're demanding, who's going to be fired next, right? Just a thought.
All right, Kelly, I think we're pretty close to the end of our episode here. So just for our listeners, can you give us a quick summary of the highlights and what are the key things they need to take away from this episode?
So, the month of February, we're focusing on building that safety culture. And the reason we're doing that is really to emphasize the importance of the roles of every person in your organization and how you truly make your school safe. And that's building this safety culture, making sure that everyone understands that safety is a constant concern and that you have to address that and you have to train them. You have to hold people accountable and challenge them. I see you walk past that open door. Why didn't you go over and check it? They might have a very valid response. Oh, I saw somebody moving some furniture out, so that I know that's actively being monitored. Okay, that's a good response. But if their response is, oh, I don't know why it's open, then they need to go check it. And you need to challenge that. You need to challenge behaviors. You need to get back to that feeling of I am safe because I know I have done everything I can to be safe, and getting into that shift of the mindset from say something if you see something to if you see something, you need to do something. And you know what's right. You know, because you've been trained. You know what the policies are. Exercise your right to be safe. And I think once we start doing that and we start asking those questions about safety, and we continually do that, it becomes effortless for people. It reduces their anxiety, increases their confidence that they will respond appropriately. And I just think when you have this embedded, well-functioning safety culture in your school or your organization, then people have confidence in you. Your kids know that you're going to act correctly. They know that if they're a victim of bullying, that they can come to you and say, hey, look, at so-and-so is bullying me, and that you're going to take the right response and the right action there. And if the kids are safe, they're going to meet their potential and they're going to be confident. They're going to be, happy coming to school. Things are going to be so much better. Parents are going to feel confident that you are looking out for the best interest and the safety of their kids. So building that safety culture is really looking at those three pillars that we've been talking about: the systems, the policies, and the people, and tying that together and really supporting those three pillars by tying them all together and making them all work to your benefit.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode where we delved into the topic of creating a strong safety culture within your organization. We hope you now have a better understanding of the key elements that make up a successful safety culture, from establishing policies and procedures, training, and commitment from management to leadership that influences the desired safety culture. Remember, infusing safety into every decision and aligning beliefs, values, and behaviors towards a common goal of safety is crucial to creating a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment for all. Make sure to like and subscribe to our podcast for future episodes that come out every other week. And hit that notification bell to get notified when our next podcast is available. Until next time, stay safe and keep advocating for a strong safety culture.